Okay, good morning, everyone. We are now up to Paraklav Mishnah Hay. A quick introduction to this Mishnah is that the rabbis, in response to the practice of the surrounding nations to bury their dead in any place, not just in cemeteries, decree that all lands outside of Eretz Yisrael be considered tamei. All lands outside of Eretz Yisrael are considered ritually impure. Initially, this decree was directed only at the earth of the foreign lands, because it was feared that a clump of earth might contain a barley grain-sized particle of bone from the corpse, which communicates tumah if touched or carried. The original decree was the dirt itself. The dirt, coming into contact with the dirt of outside of Eretz Yisrael, is going to make you tamei. The reason was because they were concerned that maybe there's a tiny bone fragment that, according to Torah law, is enough to make you impure by coming into contact with it, touching it, carrying it, and so small you may not know it. And therefore, the decree was that all dirt from outside of Eretz Yisrael makes you tamei. Eventually, what actually evolved was that not only was the coming into contact with the dirt going to make you tamei, but just being in the airspace of chutz la'aretz would make you tamei. And therefore, even if you never touch the ground because you're in a wagon, which is being in the airspace of chutz la'aretz, that would be enough to make you tamei. Okay, so with this introduction, now we can proceed with beginning the Mishnah. Ein motziin shemen sreifa, one may not take out oil that is to be burnt. We'll explain what that means soon. Uperes shvius, and shmita produce, they are aretz from the land, meaning from Eretz Yisrael, l'chutz la'aretz to outside of Eretz Yisrael. That's the first opinion. First opinion goes that you may not take out what's called shemen sreifa, or take out shmita produce from Eretz Yisrael to chutz la'aretz. So we need to explain each one on its own. So first of all, shemen sreifa means oil of truma, olive oil. That is truma. Truma being from the first of the first of the New Year's produce. You have to make sure to separate a certain amount of the produce for the kohen. That's called truma. Now, if we're talking about in the case of olives or producing olive oil, you would separate from the olive oil as truma for the kohen. If truma becomes tamei, comes into contact with a source of ritual impurity, it becomes forbidden for the kohen to eat. You're not allowed to cause truma to become tamei. Now, if you had this olive oil that became tamei, there is something that the kohen could do with it. And that is, he could use it for fuel. He can use it in his lantern. He can use it for fuel. And it comes out then that not only is he he's not eating it, and actually, when truma becomes tamei, there is an obligation to burn it. But that doesn't exclude the possibility for him to benefit from that burning, which is to actually use the oil in his lantern. He benefits, the oil gets burned, and everything is taken care of. Now, the question is, where can that burning take place outside of Eretz Yisrael? The discussion here is, you want to take that oil that became tamei and take it out of Eretz Yisrael into what's called Eretz Amamin, the land of the nations, which is tamei, as we just said. Now, regular truma, you're not be allowed to take out of Eretz Yisrael to chutz la'aretz, because then you're rendering the truma tamei. You're not allowed to do that. But here the Mishnah is telling us that even if the truma is already tamei, even if this oil, it's called shemen sreifa, it's called oil to be burnt, because that's what you're supposed to do with it. And the Mishnah is telling us that you can't even take that out of Eretz Yisrael. It's already tamei, but you still can't take it outside of Eretz Yisrael. Why is that? So Bartuner explains, because the Chachamim wanted to equate burning truma with burning a sacrifice that became invalid. Let's say you had a sacrifice and it became impure, so you can't eat its meat. It's got to be burnt. The halacha is you have to burn it within the boundaries of where it would have been eaten. Wherever this carbon would it not have become, wherever this meat of the carbon would not have become impure, wherever you would have eaten it, that's where you have to burn it. So again, depending on the sacrifice, some sacrifices can be eaten in Yerushalayim, some sacrifices can only be eaten within the Beis HaMikdash itself. So depending on where it could be eaten, or did not have become tamei, that's where you have to burn it, which means you can't just burn it anywhere. It's specifically to be burned where it would have been eaten if it would not have become invalidated by tumah. The Chachamim wanted to equate, the sages wanted to equate truma that became tummy that has to be burned to be treated the same way. And that is, you could only burn truma where you could have eaten it if it wouldn't become tummy. Truma can only be eaten in Eretz Yisrael. You can't take it out of Eretz Yisrael because then you can make it tummy. So therefore, it comes out that to burn it, you could also only burn it in Eretz Yisrael because that is the only place where it could have been eaten. It couldn't have been eaten outside of Eretz Yisrael because it would make it tummy then. So it can only be eaten in Eretz Yisrael and only be burned in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, the Mishnah says, "Ein moitziin shemen sreifa." You cannot remove, you cannot take out shemen sreifa, this truma oil that became tummy that's then to be burned. You can't take out of Eretz Yisrael you can't take it from Eretz Yisrael to outside of Eretz Yisrael because the same way you can only eat it in Eretz Yisrael, you can only burn it in Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, even the truma that's tummy, you can't take it out. That's the first halacha. The second halacha is perish shvius, shmita produce. Also cannot be removed from Eretz Yisrael to outside of Eretz Yisrael. The reason for that is because, as we mentioned before, Shemitah produce, again, does not belong to anybody. But at the same time, and a person who has a field is no worse than anybody else. He can go into his field and collect and pick when he needs for his family. Now, if that produce remains in your house for a period of time, so that this specific type of produce would not be available for animals to forage in the field, the Torah then says that type of food you must remove from your house, and you have to render it ownerless. You have to be mafkir. You have to declare it hefker, ownerless. That's biur. Biur means to remove it from your house, your chametz. So what's happening is that if you have a specific type of growth that it's no more available in the fields for animals to eat from, even if you've collected beforehand, you have to now remove it from your home. You're not allowed to eat it until you do so. Now, if let's say it comes out that you ate it all up before that time came, so fine, you ate it up and there was nothing to make beer on. But if something is going to be left over into that time, once the time of beer comes, you have to do it, otherwise you can't eat from it. So according to the Bartanura's explanation, the reason why you cannot take Shemitah produce outside of Eretz Yisrael is not a tumah problem, it's not an impurity problem. There's nothing forbidden about making Shemitah produce tummy, but rather it's a problem of the fact that you may need to do beer on these fruits, on these whatever this produce is, and you're not allowed to do the beer in Eretz and Chutz La'aretz. You got to go back to Eretz Yisrael to do it, and we're afraid that's not going to happen. So therefore, the Mishna said, the Chachamim decreed that you cannot take Shemitah produce outside of Eretz Yisrael. You cannot take it from Eretz Yisrael outside Eretz Yisrael. And the problem being, according to the Bartanura, that you may need to do beer, and beer you cannot do outside of Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, they don't want to let you take any Shemitah fruit outside of Eretz Yisrael, so as not to come into that problem of needing to do beer outside of needing to take the fruits from outside of Eretz Yisrael back into Eretz Yisrael in order to do beer. That's the Bartanura's explanation. Another explanation that's given to why you may not remove Shemitah produce from Eretz Yisrael to outside of Eretz Yisrael is not because you can't do beer outside of Eretz Yisrael. According to many opinions, you can do. It's permissible to do beer outside of Eretz Yisrael. The problem is that Shemitah produce, as we know, has a certain sanctity. The very specific rules how to eat it. For instance, if let's say if it's people food, you can't feed it to an animal during Shemitah. You can't destroy it during Shemitah. If something is eaten raw, you may not eat it cooked. If it's meant to be cooked, you can't eat it raw. There are very specific laws of how to treat Shemitah fruit. Now, those limitations don't apply to produce that grew outside of Eretz Yisrael. So the concern of the sages was that if you're going to be permitted to take the Shemitah produce outside of Eretz Yisrael, it may get mixed up with the produce that was grown outside of Eretz Yisrael, but doesn't have any kind of Shemitah sanctity restrictions. And because of the mix-up between the two of them, you'll come out treating Shemitah fruit like non-Shemitah fruit. Therefore, they said, no taking any Shemitah produce out of Eretz Yisrael, lest you come to mix it up with the produce of outside of Eretz Yisrael and not treat it properly. And the Yad Avram points out that really what comes out, there's a big practical difference between these two explanations. Because there are certain types of produce that you never have to do beer on, because we know they're always available in the field. Since they're always available in the field the entire Shemitah, there is no obligation for beer. So according to the Bartanura's explanation, that the problem of taking Shemitah produce outside of Eretz Yisrael is because you need to do beer in Eretz Yisrael. Well, if you're talking about a type of produce that there is no beer that has to be done on it, then there should be no problem taking it outside of Eretz Yisrael. But according to the other explanation, that the problem is that we're afraid that you won't treat the Shemitah produce outside of Eretz Yisrael appropriately, then no matter what we're talking about, if it's Shemitah produce with the sanctity of Shemitah produce, you're not be able to take it outside of Eretz Yisrael, so that you don't come to mix it up with other fruits and not treat it properly. So that's the Tanakhama's opinion. That's the first opinion of the Mishnah. Amar Rebbe Shimon. Rebbe Shimon says, Shemati beferish, I explicitly heard from my teachers, Shemoitzian l'Surya, that you're allowed to take Shemitah produce to Surya, which we discussed we discussed previously. The Surya is an area that's north of Eretz Yisrael. Ve'ein moitzian l'chutz la'aretz. So you're allowed to take the fruits, both these examples, Shemen Sreifa and Shemitah produce. You can take them out to Surya, but you may not take them out to chutz la'aretz. So that's Reb Shimon's opinion. Shimon makes a distinction between Surya and anywhere else outside of Eretz Yisrael. According to Reb Shimon, Surya is like Eretz Yisrael, and therefore there's no problems. So let's go through each explanation to understand that. If the problem is that by Shemen Sreifa, the problem was the fact that it has to be burnt where you could have eaten it, which means it has to be written Eretz Yisrael. So according to Reb Shimon, Surya is just like Eretz Yisrael, and therefore you can burn it there. All right, agreed. If the reason is because of the fact that right, if the problem was that we're afraid that you're going to treat the Shemitah produce inappropriately, well, as we have learned previously, we know that there are certain laws of Shemitah that do apply in Surya, not all of them, but some of them. And the fact that Shemitah is to some degree kept in Surya, that will be enough for you to remember and to make sure that the fruits of Eretz Yisrael that are Shemitah fruit, with the Shemitah sanctity, are treated properly. And if the problem is, so I'm sorry. I have to go back to each one. So if we're talking about the Shemen Sreifa, you need to burn it in Eretz Yisrael, Surya is good enough. If the problem with the Shemitah produce is the fact that you have to do beer in Eretz Yisrael, you can do beer in Surya. If the problem is, that's according to the way the Bartanura learned. If you learn like the others, that the problem with the Shemitah produce that you get confused. So there we say that regarding the confusion, since some laws of Shemitah are kept in Surya, you will make sure to be aware and be careful with the Shemitah produce that comes out of Eretz Yisrael. It has to be treated specifically the way Shemitah produce has to be treated. And the halacha is not like Reb Shimon. The halacha is like the Tanakhama, and these in the Shemen Sreifa, the olive oil truma that became tamei, or the Shemitah produce cannot go to anywhere outside of Eretz Yisrael, including Sefer. Okay, now the Sefer HaMitzvot. Trying to get my color back, it's not happening. Okay, mitzvahs aseh sheyatame kind l'krayva. Positive commandment, mitzvah in test 59. Positive commandment that a Kohen should become tamei to his relatives. Shenemar, as it says, li'imai u'l'aviv u'l'vnai u'l'vitay u'l'achiv l'chasei ha'b'sula lo yitama. A Kohen may become impure to the dead body of his mother, father, son, daughter, brother, and virgin assistant. Lo yitama, to her and to all of them, he shall become tamei. That is a commandment. That's a mitzvah. Even though we know a Kohen it's forbidden to become impure through contact with any sort of tuma of a dead body. But for krayvim, for relatives, not only is he allowed to become tamei, he's obligated. He's obligated to participate in their burial and their funeral. Also, to his wife who's in a suah, he also can make himself tamei. Now, as we've learned previously, the process of marrying a woman starts with kedushin. You betroth her by giving her the ring. She's not fully your wife until chuppah. So when we say that you can become a Kohen can become Tameh for his wife, it means his wife was in a Suah. She's already gone to Chuppah. Before that, though she is married to him legally, but she's not completely married, he would not be able to become impure for her. And we talk about the Kohen's brother and sister. We're talking about specifically a brother and sister from the same father. If it's only a brother and sister from the same mother, he would not be allowed to become impure for that. The Nashim Einan Mukuyavais Li Tamais Takrevin Avishus Etzlan. When it comes to women, women are not obligated to become tamei to their close relatives, to participate in the burial, in the funeral of their relatives. It's up to them if they want to. Now, but they still need to observe the morning observances. This pasuk really is a mitzvah for anybody who has to be in mourning, not just the Kohen. And every Jewish person is obligated to mourn for one of the 7 relatives mentioned before. That is mother, father, son, daughter, brother, and virgin sister, and one's wife. All these people in this mitzvah, when we say the Kohen has to make himself tamei, that means that everybody is obligated. Everybody, it's not just the case of Kohen. Anybody who loses a close relative has to participate in the burial, which would be in a way that would make them tamei. Being under the same roof, being in a cemetery, all these things they're obligated to participate in. At the same time, a woman is not obligated to participate in them. She may, and a woman who's a Kohen has no even prohibition to become. A woman who's the daughter of a Kohen, the wife of a Kohen, there's no prohibition for her to become tamei. The point is, though, that when it comes to those acts that make you tamei, like being involved in the burial, being present at the burial in the cemetery, these things a woman isn't obligated to do. But to mourn, to do the mourning observances, that she is obligated to do. And again, this pasuk tells us the obligation that there is of observing mourning for a close relative that passes away. The observances of the Torah obligation for these observances is the first day. And all the other days of Avelis are rabbinic in nature, meaning when we say observing Shiva, the first day of Shiva is a Torah obligation, while the rest of Shiva is not. It's a rabbinic obligation. This applies in all places and at all times. Have a wonderful day. And just to remind everyone that tonight at 8 o'clock will be the Shabbos HaGadol Rosh. Have a great day.